Hey, how you guys doing? So today we're gonna sculpt the eyes. Now I know it can be quite intimidating to sculpt something that you don't really understand. In this video, I'm gonna show you some cool tips and tricks, and I'm gonna simplify it as much as possible and take you through the sculpting process. Now, if you've never sculpted before, I have a beginner sculpting course in Blender. I'll add the link in the description below. Anyways, hold up. Let's rewind. Okay, let's get right to it. So first things first, when you want to sculpt an eye, it's always a good idea to have some eyeballs ready. You can use a simple sphere to represent this. I simply just modeled it and pushed it outwards over here. That's how it is in real life. So once you have the eyes ready, again, a simple sphere would do. What I'm gonna do here is I'm going to sculpt the surroundings of the eye and show you how to sculpt the eyelids. Because I know it can be intimidating, but it's quite simple if you understand some basics, which I'm going to explain in this video. So hopefully you guys know how to sculpt. If you don't, I have a sculpting beginner course that I'll add in the link in the description below. That will show you how to sculpt. Okay, so actually I'm not going to activate the dynamic topology yet. What I'm going to do here is just kind of shape this area to get something that looks right. All right, so I'm going to use any brush like the clay strips, use the control button to push it inwards and see what we're working with over here. So it's quite useful to have the eyeballs because the eyelids wrap around the eyeballs. That is the main reason. All right. So here we have the orbit, which is the eye socket. That's where the eyes are placed. And then we have the eyebrows. So, well, really the brows above over here where we have the eyebrows on it. So I'm just gonna add this section over here. Okay. And then we have this part over here that starts going outwards because of the nose, but we're probably gonna stop right over here. Maybe even push this downwards so that we can have some room to breathe when sculpting the eyes. Actually, I'd like to push this part as well outwards like that, and then backwards because it turns back over here. Right, perfect. So right now I'm still not adding details, I'm just shaping it, getting things ready. And yeah, that looks pretty cool. So over here, just make sure that the brows are pushed far enough, because right now they're not. Whoops, probably gonna have to sculpt over here since I created the mirror modifier. There you go, that looks fine. And the muscle around the eye is called the orbicularis oculi. Then we have the eyelids to keep an eye out on. And this really interesting part of the eye that you need to be aware of is over here. Generally, it's a bit goes inwards, and then over here it kind of goes outwards, but we'll get more into that when I start sculpting the eyes. So we're gonna do exactly that. I'm just going to activate the dynamic topology with Control D button, which basically will help us add details. So I'm gonna keep it as 6. All right. So the control button I can remove from the mesh using the clay strips. Again, all of that is explained in the beginner sculpting course in Blender. So if you never sculpted before, check that out first. The link's in the description below. And here I'm going to add the lower eyelids. Right, just adding some mesh. He looks really scared right now. That's funny. We got an expression already, but we're not really going for a scared expression, so I'll fix that by adding the upper eyelids. So generally when you want a relaxed look, looking straight, the upper and lower eyelids touch the iris. Now just keep in mind all eyes are different. They're gonna differ from one person to another. We're gonna go with something really basic over here. And you can take the information that you learn in this video and use it to sculpt whatever eye you want. Just take some practice to basically learn how to stylize the eye. But if you don't know the basics, if you don't learn that first, you're gonna have a hard time later on. Okay, so one cool thing to understand is that the eyes are not symmetrical. That's quite important. So generally you have a curve over here that's closer to the nose. That's for the upper eyelids. It kind of does that and then curves, right? And then goes back down and backwards like that. See, it wraps around the eyeballs. Quite simple. Okay. And for the lower eyelid, it's a bit of the opposite. The curve is actually further away from the nose, so it's closer to the ears. Here on the left. And then we have the lacrimal caruncle that I have to keep in mind for when creating the eyes, especially if you're going for something more on the realistic side of things. So the lacrimal caruncle is the pinkish thing that you find over here. We will add it in a second, so I'm gonna push this further that way. Just gonna take a look with X button to see the corners of the eyes. So generally this part here ends a bit before the end, and this one as well. So we can see that here we need to push or use another brush to just get more space, because the whites on the left side should be around the same on the right side when the person is looking forward. Obviously with cartoonic characters and stylized eyes, you don't always see that, but right now we're gonna learn it the right way. Keep in mind that the upper eyelids go a bit more forward than the lower eyelids. So I'm gonna use the scrape brush with the flat curve that is explained in the beginner course on why I do that. So I'm gonna use it over here to flatten things out and refine it just a bit so that I can see what I'm working with. So I'm going to shape the lower eyelid over here by just curving it with the crease brush. Voila. So generally you have this part over here goes down like that, and then at a point around this area it starts going back upwards and stops at the end of the lower eyelids. Okay, so far so good. And then for the upper one, we're going to define it as well. There you go. We're gonna play around with this shape real soon to make it look more interesting, but for now I'm just basically just adding all the important points before I start getting into details. Okay, so we could definitely use some mesh in the upper area, but I'm gonna add it soon. For now I'm still gonna work on the eyelids. So I'm gonna just smooth this out so that it doesn't come in the way when I'm sculpting. But I did talk earlier about how over here it kind of goes inwards like that. So I'm removing from the mesh and over here outwards like that. A convex and concave shape if you must. All right, looking good. Smoothing things out, making them look more natural. Just gonna add the separation between the nose and the eyes over here. All right. So far so good. That already looks like a pretty cool eye, to be honest. But we could definitely work on this area. If it was stylized, I could keep it the way it is. But since I'm trying to teach you the basics, I'm gonna kind of fix it. So here, I'm going to push the upper eyelids down so that we get a more prominent curve over here. Again, that really depends on the type of eye you're going for, but generally that gives an interesting shape. It makes the curve over here more prominent, more obvious, and hence more interesting. All right, and then it kind of comes down at this area and then goes back down, and it ends around over here. Now again, I'm not really sure if I mentioned that, but this section over here, it can line up with this section. It could be above or a bit under. It will change the type of eye you have. Keep that in mind when sculpting for later on. Always good to have reference with you. Personally, I'm not using any specific reference right now, but I know how an eye works, so that's fine for a quick tutorial. But when you're sculpting, always use reference. I use reference generally when I sculpt, even if I know how it works. It's always good. It reminds you on all of the subtle details and make sure that you don't create misinformation with time and create bad habit. Okay. Let's see, I'm gonna take a look at the eye, see what I'm gonna do next. Actually, I'm still gonna play around with the shape of the eyelid. Try to make it look smooth over here. Like over here you can see it's a bit wobbly, so I'm just gonna try to make the wrapping real smooth. I'm gonna make sure that it's the same above. Over here, maybe push this part backwards. You guys get the idea, right? And over here, I'm going to add the lacrimal caruncle that I talked about, or at least create the space for it. So let's see. Oops, maybe I removed a bit too much. Let me just use the grab brush to shape this angle, which is called the medial angle of the eye over here, right? Oop. And then over here, the mesh is going out a bit too much. I'm gonna have to remove from that. So with the control button, with the clay strips, we can do that. Then I'm smoothing it out with the shift button. Perfect. All right. Yeah, that's a bit better. That's why we got the shadow over here. Just take a look at your eye. Unless you have a very different eye, then maybe that won't be the case. Okay. Let's take a look. Pretty good. That's looking really cool for a basic eye. I could actually stop the tutorial right here and say, hey, you know, that's how you sculpt an eye. Anyways, so the lacrimal caruncle is this pinkish area. I'm just going to basically sculpt it directly here. I'm gonna create it separately. But if you want to create a material for it, then you're gonna have to create a separate mesh for this part. All right. Now in some cartoonish eyes, you might not see the lacrimal caruncle, but it's always good to know that it's here. Okay. And then I'm actually gonna save and pause the video soon for a second so that I could properly take a look at what I created and see if we can move on. So yeah, I'm gonna save right here and I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So what I'm gonna do over here is I'm going to raise the lower eyelids a bit. Now it looks fine and some people look like that, but it gives more of a sad look, sad eyes. Since I'm going for something more generic, I'm gonna raise this part. Maybe even make this curve right over here a bit more prominent. There you go, that was good. Smooth things out. Okay. So I'm gonna raise it right here and make sure that there's an angle, as I have explained at the beginning of the video. Right over here. Then it goes upwards and backwards, like that. It's looking real nice. Making sure that the eyelids have enough thickness. They're not too flat. Perfect. Let's take a look. That looks a bit better. Okay. And what we could do is we could play around with the upper shape as well a bit. Create more of an angle over here. The angle's usually right at the point where there is the iris. So over here. And then it calms down. Almost straight, but not really. It still curves, and then curves downwards over here, almost like there's another angle right at this area, but less prominent than the first one. There you go. And then we can use the clay strips to add more details over here. It's looking a bit lacking. All right, it's pretty good. Just trying to fill up the end of the lower eyelids. And let's take a quick look. Let me just make sure that the dynamic topology is activated, which it is not, which is actually fine right now. I'm not really using it, so that's completely fine. All right. Perfect. So for now, we're gonna stick to that. That looks fine. Still looks a bit sad. You can definitely just play around with the shape later on to fix that. Yeah, it's probably the lower eyelids. If I raise it a bit, it'll look fine. And actually the end over here, if I raise it up a bit, it won't look sad anymore. So that's what I'm gonna do. There you go. Perfect. There you go, perfect. Okay. So we're gonna work with the upper part of the eye right now. I'm gonna take, actually I'm not gonna activate the dynamic topology yet. Let's work with the details we already created. And I'm going to add this part over here, like that. Make it go above the upper eyelids. So I'll just add ever so slightly some clay above the eyelids. Not too much. Don't want to go crazy with it, but yeah, you guys get the point. Oops. Perfect. Let's take a look. Looking good, looking very good. All right. Maybe a bit more over here. And we could also, for the sake of having more space, we can just grab this part and add some, or just push it upwards to have more space when sculpting. Because right now the area is a bit too tight. Yeah, turning it into a squarish shape. There you go. Okay, looking good. So I think at this point we can definitely add dynamic topology. With Control D we can activate it. And we're going to use the crease brush to kind of create this part over here that you could just slightly mark with crease brush. And then over here you're gonna get the eyebrows, the end of it over here. Hopefully I don't forget to just quickly sculpt the eyebrows just to show you how it's done. All right. So we could come over here, maybe push things outwards a bit It's looking a bit too weird. So yeah, that's a bit better. That looks better. Okay. And this area over here kind of goes downwards and then attaches over here. So it's a good idea to know what the skeleton looks like under all of this. Well, the muscles as well, obviously, both. And yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. Just adding more space again. Okay, so I added this part, which is making the eye look a bit more realistic. I think we could maybe ever so slightly just add a bit more and then smooth it out like that. That looks good. Yeah, so always look at all sides, make sure everything's looking good from all sides. Don't just focus on one side the whole time, and then when you zoom out, you're gonna look and it's just gonna look like a mess from everywhere and you're gonna waste time. All right. So we can definitely remove some of the mesh over here. There you go. And we can use the scrape brush to kind of smooth things out around the side. Perfect. So yeah, the brushes that I use quite often are the clay strips, grease brush, scrape brush, the grab brush, and the smooth brush. These are my main brushes right now. Probably the only ones I've used in this video. Alright. Just smoothing things out over here. I'm going to use the crease brush to kind of separate this part between the nose and the eyes. That looks nice. I like adding this line over here, but don't make it too obvious. Okay. And this part over here should go outwards. This is where there's the lower part of the eye socket where there's bone and muscles, and right now it's just going inwards like that. It should not do that. So we're gonna use the clay strips. Just sometimes all you gotta do is touch your own face, like try to see the surface. Just put your fingers under your eyes and then you're gonna notice over here, for example, you have the cheekbone, you have some bone over here as well. Right? And muscle. So maybe even use a mirror. Like if you have a mirror with you, that could be quite useful. See, that looks a lot better. It was looking weird. I didn't notice that I forgot to add some mesh over here, some clay. So now that I added it, the eyes are looking a lot better. Looking pretty cool. And yeah, honestly, if you watched the video to this point, I think you learned the basics already. I'm gonna go over what I did later on, so you could definitely watch till the end. I'm gonna give out the important pointers of the eyes, what to keep your eye out on for, no pun intended. Let's see. Going to add the separation. Actually got it in the wrong angle. It's like that. But it's a good thing if you watch till this point. That was a thing that I should have done earlier, but yeah. It's because I usually sculpt the other side, so I use the same motion that I'm used to doing. It was a reflex. There you go. So don't forget to post or share with me what you guys do from the tutorials on my Twitter at YanSculpts. Pretty much have the same handle for everything really, Twitter, Instagram. So yeah, I always like to see your results and see what's going on. I think at this point, I should probably pause the video, save the file, take a look at the eye again, because you know, when I'm talking, I can't really focus that much and I don't notice everything that's going on. So it's always a good idea to just pause the video and take a look. And basically have a game plan for the next steps. But I really like how the eye looks like right now. It's very fleshy, it looks good. We could add some personality if we wanted to over here, maybe push it down a bit. And maybe push this bar over here, create more of an angle. But yeah, pretty good. So before or when I'm done, I'm gonna go through some pointers. Make sure you watch till the end of the video. I'm gonna save right over here and I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So over here, I decided to maybe push this a bit to the right so that the eyes look a bit bigger and the iris looks smaller. Also, I'd like to push this down a bit over here, just so that we see a little more of the iris in the lower part. And then I'm going to make sure we got this angle over here. And for the corner, the left side, I'm gonna push it upwards a bit, like that. And try to fix any wobbly look we have from all of that moving. There we go. Just some slight changes to change the character of the eyes a bit. So at this point, it's really refinement. All right, so I pushed this part over here to the left to create the second angle I was talking about. So first angle is here, and then we have a smaller angle right over here, and then goes back down and backwards. There you go. Okay, looks good. Let's see, let's take a look. All right. So I'm pretty happy with the eyes right now. I think they look pretty cool. You got most of the information so far. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to switch to the time lapse. Basically what I'm gonna do is just refine everything and make it look pretty and presentable. So I'm basically gonna use the scrape brush to do so. And yeah, just try to render it out at the end. And I'll be back and just go over what I did and talk about the important points when sculpting the eyes. Okay, now we're switched to the time lapse. This is gonna be a really fast time lapse, 1 to 2 minutes. So basically what I did after I stopped talking through the recording is just quick refinement with the eye. The eye was pretty much done, and then I played around with the edges and created a few boxes. Once I created the boxes, I used the Boolean tool to cut the eyes just to get a nice refined box look for the eye section. And finally, once I was done, I duplicated the eye. I tried to move the pupils and the eyeballs in many different directions, and then I went back to each eye and I played around with the eyelids. So make sure you move the eyelids around when the eyeball moves around as well, because of the shape of the eyeball. If you remember how I modeled the eyeball at the beginning of the video, it'll make sense to you. Other than that, I just rendered out the eyes. I'll let you enjoy the rest of the time lapse, so just a few seconds, and then I'll get back with the final render and make a quick review on what to focus on when sculpting the eyes. And this is the final result, looking really cool. So I'm gonna do a quick recap on what to focus on when sculpting the eyes using the grease pencil. So first things first, make sure that you focus on the upper eyelid. Make sure that you create that. The lower eyelid over here. Okay, you have this angle over here. The lacrimal caruncle, so the pinkish area as well. You have this convex shape So it goes outwards, right? And then you have this concave shape over here, and this goes inwards. Now let's take a look at the other side. For the upper eyelid, make note that the curve of the upper eyelid is generally closer to the nose. So in this area over here, so it goes up like that, it curves, slows down, and then goes back and goes that direction. For the lower eyelid, the curve is actually a bit further, so it's closer to the ears. So again, the eyelids go down like that, and then it curves around this area and goes backwards this way. Okay, quite simple. Now, make sure that you understand that different people have different eyes. It even depends if you're stylizing the eye or not. For example, with this particular eye, this angle over here and this angle, the relationship looks a bit like that. So this angle is a bit higher than this angle over here. Now you can make the eyes even like that, or maybe lower. It'll change the ethnicity of the person, so where the person comes from. It'll also change the style of the eye. So for example, you'll notice that a lot of females, when they use makeup, they try to make their eye go upwards like that to make it look like a cat's eye, which I guess is more feminine. So there's a lot of things to take into account when creating the eye. Just a good idea would be to learn the skeleton behind, to understand why these shapes exist this way, why this goes outwards, why this goes inwards. And it's also important to understand the muscles and practice. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned a thing or two. You know how it is. Give it a like if you did enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. The same song every single time. I will see you guys real soon.